Welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly, and my guest panelist for today is Dr. Carmen Smith. Our guests for the show are Jackie Lapin and Joel Pitney, and the topic of our show today is the importance of a PR representative. But before we get to my guests, my pal and I would like to read a few fun quips or quotes about writing. And Carmen, I'm going to let you start.
Okay. So don't take life too seriously. You will never get out of it alive.
All right.
You got to have a sense of humor.
And Joel?
The human brain starts working the moment you are born and never stops until you stand up to speak in public. That's George Jessel.
All right. And Jackie?
My favorite is from P.T. Barnum. There is a terrible thing that happens if you don't do publicity or promotion. Nothing.
That's for sure. If you are just tuning in, I'm your host, James Kelly, and my guest panelist is Dr. Carmen Smith. Our guest is Jackie Lapin and Joel Pitney, and the topic of the show is the importance of a PR representative. My panelist for today, Dr. Carmen Smith, please tell us a little bit about who you are and the I Am Solution.
Well, I was a trauma specialist for over 20 years in Clark County Family Services, so I worked in child welfare. I've talked with kids that have experienced abuse and neglect and also their parents. And my job as a parenting coach was to work with the court and also with families trying to reunite them after being in foster care. So I'm really glad to be here. My book, The I Am Solution, is about finding the answers within ourselves, because so oftentimes we'll look outside of ourselves and the answers are within, and that is the one place that we don't look, or it takes us a long time to look. So all of our strengths, all of our struggles become our power. And so that's what the I Am Solution is about. And thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm going to let you introduce Jackie.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Jackie, our special guest. So our first guest is Jackie Lapin. She was one of the nation's first women sports writers. At age 20, she was a reporter for the Detroit Free Press. At age 21, Jackie wrote for the Associated Press and LA Times. At 22, she was a reporter for the Washington Post and a co-host of the Dr. Dugout. Moving into marketing for 35 years, Jackie has been a nationally recognized media relations expert. She was responsible for launching Yoplait yogurt to the Western United States. She created one of the largest sports special events and entertainment agencies and was responsible for the publicity for the first 4 LA marathons and the 75th anniversary of the National Hockey League. The Toyota Pro Celebrity Race every year she's responsible for, and the Golf Channel was launched by her. So in the 1980s, she was the queen of boxing.
That was an interesting thing to find out.
Handling most of the major middleweight fights. And Jackie launched poker on television with the World Poker Tour. So today, Jackie Lapin is the world's leader in educating, mentoring, and coaching people on practical conscious creation. Her newest book, Practical Conscious Creation: Daily Techniques for Manifesting Your Desires, follows on the heels of her Amazon.com #1 bestseller, The Art of Conscious Creation: How You Can Transform the World Through your consciousness. And Conscious Media Relations realizes and specializes in experts, authors, films, companies, and resources that serve the mind, body, spirit marketplace. And to date, Jackie is responsible for over 150,000 interviews.
Very impressive.
Yeah. So Jackie, do you have anything else to add? That was impressive.
Well, thank you. Well, these days, what I really focus on is serving those people who are changing the world in a positive way, somehow with a message of empowerment, and whether that's wellness or mindset or personal growth, etc. And so what I've moved on to doing, besides of Conscious Media Relations, where I do radio media tours for personal growth authors, where I reach 3,000 personal growth radio shows, 400 health and wellness, and 500 podcasts. But we've also decided that we want to help serve those people who want more exposure on their own. So we created a series of do-it-yourself resources called Speakertunity. And with Speakertunity, we give transformational leaders direct contacts where they can book themselves for speaking engagements, radio shows, podcasts, and virtual summits. Because many people don't have a big PR budget to go out and hire somebody. So this gives them the opportunity to find speaking engagements on their own and to have the direct contacts for radio shows, podcasts, and virtual summits. Makes it easy for them to get out there, get exposed, attract new clients, change more lives, and build their businesses. And so Speakertunity is really where I'm focusing a lot of my time and energy today, just to make sure that those of us who want to change the world in positive ways have more accessibility to do that.
Where can we learn about your businesses?
Well, you can go to speakertunity.com, and that's speakertunity.com. And if people are interested in having us do for them the radio media tour, they'd find that on consciousmediarelations.com. We also syndicate articles to a database of 1,500 mind, body, spirit, print, and online media so that they can get their articles out to that genre as well. So that can be found on consciousmediarelations.com. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to tell folks about those things.
Okay. Our next guest is Joel Pitney. Joel is from Boise, Idaho. He studied environmental science and film production at the New York Film Academy. He is a freelance writer and book launch specialist. Joel and his wife Laura currently live in Oregon. Joel is the former director of publicity at Enlighten Next magazine. He started Launch My Book in 2013 to help authors to promote their books and has helped put titles on the New York Times, Amazon, Wall Street Journal, and LA Times bestsellers list. As a writer, Joel works have been published in Religion Dispatch, Fast Company, The Huffington Post, Mind, Body, Green, Entrepreneur, What is Enlightenment magazine, and many more. One of the founders of the Time Future Films, Joel is currently working on a TV series based on his ancestors' journey across the Oregon Trail and other film projects, and I believe he is working on a book. Are you working on a book, Joel?
Yes.
And you want to tell us a little bit about, did I leave anything out?
No, I mean the kitchen sink maybe.
So what's the book you're working on?
It's well, I don't want to call it a memoir because I don't like the word memoir. But it's a true story about a period of my life. I lived in a spiritual community, kind of like a modern day ashram kind of thing. And I had some really interesting and exciting adventures in that world. And so I'm sharing them with the world through a book.
And do you know, when will that book be out?
I don't know.
All right. We're going to go into the group discussion portion of the show, and I'm going to read a little bit, and then we're going to talk about it. What is a PR representative? A public relations specialist establishes and maintains relationships with organizations, target audience, the media, and it's also the common responsibility of a PR representative to include designing communication campaigns, writing news releases and other content for news, working with the press, arranging interviews for authors, leaders of company spokespeople, writing speeches for company leaders, acting as an organization's spokesperson, preparing clients for press conferences, media interviews and speeches, writing website and social media content, managing company reputation, which is crisis management, managing internal communications, and marketing activities like brand awareness and even management. And I don't think people realize that the PR person has a lot to do. I mean, they really have a lot of responsibility. So let's just talk about how is a PR representative a plus for the first-time author versus the experienced novelist. And Jackie, Joel, I'll let you both just jump in there where you'd like. Jackie, you want to start?
Well, I think that the first thing is that a lot has changed in the book publicity business over the last several years. In the old days, traditional publishing companies did the publicity for the author to a large extent.
Okay.
And the author just stepped up to the plate. But these days, it's vastly different, and the author is really responsible for their own publicity efforts, and that's what Joel's so great at doing for his clients as well. And so what we have to do is make people aware of the responsibilities that they hold to help their own PR people get the program off the ground. You have to really give someone the authority and the capability to really deliver a powerful message about you. So you have to help them with getting your press materials together. You have to help define what your audience is, because you don't want to have the publicists waste their time on doing things that are non-productive. Yeah. You really want to focus on getting the tasks ready to go, so they can be ready to go out the gate when the book is ready. And actually, you're starting before the book. Yeah. There's a lot of prep that needs to go into it well before the actual launch dates of the book from a publicity standpoint. Yeah. Joel, you want to add some more?
Joel?
Yeah. Well, first off, I have to give a shout out to Jackie. I just encountered Jackie's work. I work with a lot of authors in many, many different capacities, and I can vouch for Jackie's packages. She offers these extraordinarily effective, very affordable packages for authors who need publicity but maybe don't have a big budget, which is exactly what a lot of my clients need. And I did it once with her and got great results. So I have to say that first off. The other thing, I guess I would just echo a little bit what you're saying, Jackie, about how the book industry is changing. Obviously, you've had a lot more experience in the industry than I have, but I have a lot of contacts and a lot of experience and have kind of studied how things are moving. And these days, authors basically have to do everything themselves, even if you get a big book deal, which very few people do. But even if you do get a big book deal, publishers are doing less and less and less and less and less for their authors. Absolutely. And so pretty much everything is on your shoulders. And publicity is a really, really important part of that package. I guess one thing I might say is that and Jackie, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. It seems to me that publicity itself is also changing quite a bit. You no longer can just be a traditional publicist who's got a Rolodex of contacts and sends out a blast. There's social media now. There's online marketing. There's SEO. There's Facebook. There's so many different things that you have to take into account. And so what publicity and PR is probably changing and evolving quite a bit.
I would venture to say that the majority of ways that an agency or a publicist are getting exposure is going to be online today, either on websites or through social marketing. And then radio is a good source, but the traditional magazine opportunities are very tough to get into. Those people source a lot of their own material, and they don't respond to PR people the way that they used to. The newspapers have crunched down to so little space that they really don't do very, very little related to books and anything related to that. To local coverage, the TV stations have also crunched down, and a lot of times, while you might have local morning shows, a lot of them are now asking you to pay to get on. Yeah. So where the publicist was really putting their efforts in the old days, is going to be fruitless. You can continue to try, and that's one of the reasons why I don't do mainstream publicity any longer, except including it in our radio tours, because it's just too hard to get anything for somebody and have them get return on investment. So if you're going to hire a publicist, you really need to be very clear about what it is that they're going to be doing for you. And if they tell you they're going to get you a whole bunch of gazillion things, I would look very, very seriously askance at that, and really get a realistic view of what they think they can accomplish for you. And if it's all online, that's fine, as long as you know that's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm going to add a little bit to this, because when I started with radio, I really didn't know how to go about getting guests. And the first way I went about it is I discovered a site called radioguestlist.com. So I went there first and placed an ad. The only thing I found about, I like Radio Guest List. I'm not knocking it in any way whatsoever. But what I found is that sometimes you're getting just the first-time authors. And for me, with my format on my show, I like to have the experienced as well as the first-time author. It worked okay. I got a lot of authors. But then all of a sudden in my email one day, I got this list from, or a solicitation from Jackie. You were actually the very first PR person that contacted me. And I'm just curious, how did you even find the show? Because at that time I was on KLAV, which was a local radio station. And, I'm just curious, how did you go about finding this show?
Well, you were on Radio Guest List, right?
I guess I placed an ad for authors.
Well, that's how I found you, because I mine Radio Guest List every week.
Oh, okay.
And then I pick the ones that are appropriate to us, and I adapt them into our list. So they're a great resource for us. That's one of several ways that I find additional radio shows. But we're always trying to keep our list fresh. So you popped up on one of those.
And what's interesting is once I met you, apparently I'm on your list. So then you send out information to the people like Joel who contact you, because the next thing I know, now I'm getting emails from other PR people. And for a long time, I couldn't figure this out. Like, how are they finding me? Of course, Radio Guest List, you just explained, is one way. But the other way is through you.
Yeah, we serve a lot of other PR agencies because we're a quick and easy. Anybody who serves the personal growth, mind, body, spirit space, we actually private label for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it really nice because we like to build relationships. In the conscious business model, people aren't your competitors, they're your colleagues. And you work collaboratively with people. We don't see people as competitors. So a lot of times we collaborate with folks.
Well, the reason I brought that up, Carmen and Jackie and Joel, is because when you're an author, and especially if you're just starting out in the business, you need to understand how PR works. A lot of times we think I hire a PR person, they're going to call every radio station, they're going to call the newspapers like Jackie was talking about, the TV stations, and they may do some of that. But more than likely, they're going to branch out and seek information out, like on Radio Guest List or from someone like Jackie or Joel. They're going to basically network. So that's how you're going to get that across. I had a young lady on, actually my co-host in the past, Janet Corsi. Janet came on my show as an experiment, and one of the first things we did after the book was finished and published is we went out and hired a PR firm. And I'm bringing this up because, Jackie, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, and it's so important to mention this. And even I, back then, didn't understand what that PR person would do for an individual, because I had one in the past when I launched my first book, but it was just for local events. It wasn't to go out there nationally. And so what we found is that this person was able to get her like 6 or 7 radio shows and maybe 1 or 2 write-ups in, local newspapers. And I think she was expecting more. And we talked about that, Jackie. A lot of people think that once you go on a radio show, that immediately you're going to sell millions of copies of your book. And the reality is you may not even sell one. You may sell a few, but more than likely you're not. But what that does is by going out there and being on radio or getting written up in a local paper or something like that, is it gives you recognition. The public that might go to a book signing that you're at will go, I heard of that person somewhere, or I heard them talking on the radio. And I think that helps familiarize that person enough that you want to go meet them, or at least that's the hopes. And did you have anything to add to that, Jackie?
I think one of the things it does is it gives you much greater web presence when you start doing a lot of interviews. Mm-hmm. And when people start looking you up, they begin to see that there's buzz about you. And I think that what publicity does these days is build your profile. Uh-huh. Help create the kind of momentum that will allow you to do other things. We were talking about some do-it-yourself publicity things like Radio Guest List. And there's another really good one that helps people who are trying to do their own publicity, and a lot of publicists use it. And it's called HARO, Help a Reporter Out. And I think it's haro.com. And people can sign up there, and then weekly or daily, actually, you get people who are looking for different experts on various different subject matter, so that you will see the opportunities and jump on them right away so that you can begin to generate publicity. That's something a publicist will actually do today. They're all on Haro looking for ways and opportunities to present you and move you forward. And every now and then there's a national media that shows up on there. So it's a good way in the door with some of the big media. But I think you're right. A lot of people have very, very high expectations of what publicity can do for them. And the truth of the matter is, one, if you're not published by a national traditional publisher, You're not going to get on national media to a large extent.
No.
And there are lots of media opportunities if you are willing to look for them, but they aren't necessarily going to give you instant national recognition. This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving out that tip about Haro.com. I wanted to mention my story, which is probably a lot of the listeners' stories. And that is, I was coming from a field where I was an expert in a field. I wrote a book thinking that I was probably going to get discovered, and I self-published. And then I found out that no, like you said, the author does the work.
Yeah.
The author is now the marketer of the book and does all the publicity. So I had to go into a world where I was not an expert. And so I was looking for people to guide me in that way. So in about 2014, I know you've heard of Burchard. Oh, I can't think of his
Brandon Burchard.
Brandon Burchard was doing Experts Academy and Millionaire Maker and all this kind of thing. And so he was teaching people how to do marketing online and how to do your website and how to, get on YouTube and do a podcast and all of these other things to get out there. And I realized that I had to have so many different hats, and that can be very not only frustrating, but intimidating. And I think there might be people out there that, they've written this book and it took a lot to do that. And now the other hurdle is to market and be online in so many different ways and learn about Instagram. And especially if you're in an older generation, you really have to master the internet. So is that also something that you teach, or that you are letting your authors know that they have to be equipped in this whole area of the internet?
That's not my area of expertise. I'm an old school girl. And so I definitely refer people to folks like Joel. I mean, Joel, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do when you bring an author along?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting. What you were just speaking about is the exact reason that I even have the niche that I'm in. There are all these people who now all of a sudden have to be authors and they have to be marketers, and they either don't have the time because they have full-time jobs. Most people who publish books have another job, and a book is more of a hobby, or it's a way to maybe build recognition or brand or clientele for their other business, or they don't have the expertise, and so people need help with all the millions of little tiny things that are required of you. A lot of that is online marketing. A lot of it is social media. A lot of it is website presence. So that's where I think that my title is book launch specialist, which is something I just made up after working with people in this capacity for a while and realizing, oh my goodness, there's all these people who need this kind of help. They need someone who can kind of take them through the process, whether that be the self-publishing route, making sure that their book gets put in the right places at the right price at the right time, all the way through running marketing campaigns, all the way through finding them the right publicity packages with people like Jackie. So there's a lot to it. And you're right. I mean, you have to have a real do-it-yourself spirit, or you need someone to help you out. And in my experience, you actually need a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
And you do those great bestseller campaigns too, which is something that authors.
Well, I do, but I'm less and less interested in bestseller campaigns, to be honest. I think they're a little gimmicky these days, and I think that the weight of a bestseller, it doesn't carry as much weight as it used to, because anybody can game the system and pop their book up on Amazon for a little while. If people really want to have that title best-selling author, and I think they have the means to do it, I will orchestrate something. But I don't think to me, it runs a little bit counter to a good long-term, organic, holistic, multidimensional marketing approach. And I think, Jackie, you were speaking to that earlier, that it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And it's important to set yourself up that way. And I think bestseller campaigns often set the wrong expectation. They're not good. And, I ran one a month ago, but they're rare.
And I think anyone who thinks they're going to go out there and have a bestseller right off the bat in a month or two, they're mistaken. I have authors who 3 years later are out there pushing their book. And actually, I know of one author right now who's just gaining momentum after 3 years. The great thing about it is he had his first novel out. He's written 2 more since. So every time he introduces a new author or a new book, he gets to go back and push the first one. You're right. It is a marathon. You're not going to just jump in there and finish it in a few days, few months.
I don't know if you've heard the Chicken Soup for the Soul story, but Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, they couldn't get anybody to pay attention to their book at all. In fact, they went through dozens and dozens and dozens of publishers until they ended up with HCI. And one of the things that they did was they made a commitment to call 5 media every single day. Just 5 media, and try to get those stories going, those interview opportunities going, and it spiraled into a national phenomena. Just by doing that, individually calling 5 media a day. I think that's a great strategy for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried doing PR, not the way you and Joel are doing it, but I did have a couple people I helped with their PR, and I found it very difficult. It is not easy to open a door, and unless you have a name in the business, really, it's hard to get someone's attention. Like, well, who are you calling me, and why? And it really is not that easy. I realize a lot of people cannot afford it, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you is like, because Joel, you were talking about you structure yours to where even the first-time author, there are some people on a budget that they could possibly afford. And I think it's important to talk about that because the author I told you about that we hired a PR person, she did pay decent money. I don't think it was that much because she had contracted for 6 weeks. But for someone who doesn't have a lot when they're out there trying to push their book, $1,000 or $2,000 can seem like a lot for PR.
Right. I mean, that's how I found Jackie, to be honest. I mean, I've worked with a lot of publicists, some high-powered, big-name publicists with lots of New York Times bestsellers on their CVs, and we'll run these campaigns, but they charge, a good publicist is going to charge upwards of $5,000 a month, and they're going to want to run a campaign that's minimum 3 months, better 6 to 12. And that's big money for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so I was getting conflicted a lot with a lot of my authors. For a while, I was trying to say, oh, we'll try this publicist, try that publicist. And I even worked out some discount packages with some bigger publicists, but we would get what we paid for. We didn't get a lot out of those things. But I knew that we still needed publicity because there's a certain portion of a campaign, of a book launch campaign, that you still need that radio, blog, podcast, article exposure.
Yes.
And I needed a way to be able to get that exposure at kind of a discounted price. And Jackie has these great campaigns where you don't have to pay as much. You still get access to her lists, and you also get her expertise for pitching. But you do a lot of the work and a lot of the follow-up yourself, which doesn't require the expertise. It just takes persistence and attention to detail. And so I think it's a perfect solution for small budget authors these days.
I have a question for you both. I dealt with a PR person who is actually out of Louisville, Kentucky, but met him here in Las Vegas at the studio when I was at KLAV. He was going the circuit with one of his authors, and he was doing, he was actually flying with certain authors to their events or their shows that they had booked. He had told me that sometimes he would pay $100 or a couple $100 just to be on a show sometimes.
Yes.
That is true?
Yes. Media are, and it's television and radio. Both of them are, you're going to find people that are actually charging these days. It's the pay to play model. And usually the TV started around $500 per appearance, and they go up from there.
Wow.
And it depends on who the client is. I mean, for example, I have had clients that were putting on a major conference in a marketplace, and for them, it was absolutely worth the money. But for the average author, it's not. I think that you'll find that, and one of the things that I was going to also say is that if you're going to look for a publicist, you really need to look for a specialist in either your genre or in books. What will happen is if you go to a generalist, then a lot of times they really don't know. It takes them too long to get up to speed to really be able to get you something.
Yeah, and I think that when a publicist, I know, or when a PR person in the past has charged, like the client I told you about, they didn't realize that he's actually paying for some of these shows. I've actually had authors who come to me. I know I do not charge for anyone to be on my show, but I've actually had authors saying, James, why aren't you charging someone to be on your show? And I will never do that. I'm just letting everyone know right now. I don't pay for my guest. I am an author myself. I know what it's like to struggle. I struggled when I first got out there in 1995. And it cost, even though today's technology is so different than when I started. And I know, Jackie, you've been doing this a while. Joel, you probably haven't been going back as far as I did. But when I started out, it was really hard to get, as a self-published author, it was very difficult to get your name out there. We didn't have the internet like we do today, because 95 is when I published my first book. And so you didn't have a platform to go out there and push your book. So it was hard to find these shows to go on and do whatever you needed to do. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, too, is how do you develop a platform for a new author?
Joel, you want to start with that one?
Well, that's a very multidimensional approach. I mean, the first thing you have to do is get clear about your messaging. I think it's important, your target audience and your messaging, but I won't spend a lot of time talking about that. Social media is a great way to do that. And with the way Facebook is set up, you can get a Facebook page going pretty easily. And with a minimum investment, you can build quite a bit of audience and you can target that audience. And you can start creating content that's going to resonate with those people. So that's one way I like to get things started. You get a website, you get social media going. You can do PR campaigns, but I'll leave that part more to Jackie to talk about. One of the things that I really like to do when I launch a book to try and get exposure is I like to encourage authors to really leverage the resources they already have. I think a lot of people underestimate what they already have in their world, their networks, the power of their networks, the power of their existing relationships. And so I like to do a lot of outreach. We go through we do an analysis of who people know and who might be able to get them access to social media lists, email lists, media opportunities, maybe speaking engagements, maybe trade, businesses that might want to buy large quantities of their books if that's a relevant thing. And then we reach out to them strategically. And then we start looking for more people who maybe aren't in their networks but could become part of their networks, and we start reaching out to them in on a kind of a cold calling basis. So that's a really big part of, that's a great way to go from being nobody to being somebody. And again, you have a lot more resources at your disposal than you think you do.
I think one of the things to point out here as well is there is a difference between the younger generation and the baby boomer generation. I had someone on 3 years ago who, when he came on my show, and he really didn't know, he did not have an author's website. He was not on social media of any type whatsoever, feared it, and he didn't have any platform. Literally just selling his book word of mouth. Now, he had a personal website, and he would put his book there and give people the address where they could send him a check for the book. But he didn't understand how important it is to have that personal website, that author website. And I think that's one of the places you have to start. Yes, Jackie?
And there's another interesting factor, too, that's changed. In the old days, you could go on an interview and give people your website, and they would go to your website and buy your book. That doesn't happen today. Anytime you are on the air, if you mention your book, they are going straight to Amazon.
Right.
So throwing people to your website, pulling them there by getting them to buy your book there doesn't exist anymore.
No. Well, because it's so hard to trust where to go with, outlets to pay, for one thing.
Well, I think simply people are so used to getting the financial benefits that Amazon offers to an author, to a reader.
Yeah.
They're going to go there first.
one thing I would add to that, Jackie, is I think there is still value for an author website, but not selling your books there.
Right.
Right. I agree.
If you're going to have an author website, it gives you a chance to promote your book and maybe other services and other things. Maybe have an email subscribe so you can build a customer base. But I almost never encourage anyone to sell their book anywhere other than Amazon. So your buy buttons are sending them to Amazon to do the purchasing.
And Joel, one of the things I like to point out is what I've discovered from people who have listened to the show that talk to me about it is they like to know something about who's on the show. They want to know. So if you have an author's website, if I entice you enough to be interested in that author, they can go to your website and read your bio and learn more about you. We're in a world today where we're self-doubters. We doubt ourselves in the sense that, can I really do this? Do I have the ability? And we all know, all four of us sitting here know that if you have the desire to write, you can do it. If you have the desire to go out there and get it in the public's hands, you can do it. It's just learning what the techniques are to get it out there. I don't have a PhD, but I can still write a novel. I just need an editor.
And I think one of the things that's really overlooked is the single most effective way to sell a book is in person. Yes. And that's why people overlook speaking as a vital element in their marketing mix. Mm-hmm. And if you're shy, you really need to brush up your stage presence, because those are the people that will buy from you on site in the moment. Yes. And you want to be able to do that. You want to find the opportunities. That's why we created Speakertunity. Right. It's for people like this, because there are so many ways to get people engaged, not just to buy your book when you're in speaking, but you can also get them to join your community. You can give them a free gift online or have them sign up for it in the room. And now you've got them in your community, and you can sell them ultimately more products by building a relationship with them. And Joel and I both, I know you agree. It's really about relationship building with the person. Yes. The book is just the opening step. If you have a business, your goal is to really engage that person so that they're going to stick around a long time and want more and more and more from you. So the speaking and the book go hand in hand as a door opener to building that relationship.
And I would agree with you. I don't consider myself an author, but I am a public speaker, and I've been speaking for many, many years. My goal is to be in the conferences and the conventions where Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, because I'm a spiritual teacher. So I see myself as a speaker. And so I really I'm on your list, Jackie, with the Speakertunities, because I have an opportunity to submit myself. And I want to add that the best speaking engagements I've ever gotten, I've met the person in person rather than sending them something through social media. I met James in person, and also Rhythmia in Costa Rica, where I'll be in April. I met the owner in person, and I'll be there for 7 days. So I really do agree with you. You get the best when you're in person with that client.
One of the things, Jackie, I didn't know that much about you, even though I'd been dealing with you since 2012, until this year, just a few months ago, when I did an impromptu event at Alexis Park here in Las Vegas, and you had sent me some information on Maureen St. Germain, and she, from that, I got 2 other interviews at that same event, by the way. But Maureen basically told me a little bit about you, because I never even think about who I'm dealing with unless I see them in person either, like Carmen was saying. Mm-hmm. And then I was intrigued about you, Jackie, when Maureen starts talking to me about an event that happened in San Diego, and I think your car broke down or something, and you went to her house briefly while they fixed it or something. Yeah. And so that made me fascinated. I was intrigued to meet you at that point.
Well, thank you.
So that's why it's good to know sometimes something about the author.
Well, and if you are going to hire representation, you really want to have a good feel about them.
Yeah.
You want to have a sense that they're looking after you. One of the things that happens with big agencies a lot of times is that the main person will come in and sell you on how fabulous their firm is, but then they're going to hand you off to a junior person.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you get lost. And so, you have to have that confidence that either this is the person who's going to handle you, or if they are going to handle you off, that person can do what you want. That's why you have to be vigilant when you hire an agency to make sure that you're tracking what they're doing, staying on top of it, having conversations. You're building a relationship with them just as you're treading on their relationships with the people that they're introducing to you to. You can't just say, okay, here's my money, you know what you're doing, and walk away.
No.
Yeah, that's right.
Go ahead.
That's
Joe.
right. Well, no, I was going to say, I mean, as someone who's worked on both sides of that, as someone who works with people, with clients who have hired me to get them exposure, and also working with publicists who we've hired to get exposure, the more you talk, the more you get. It's just the way it is. If you're top of mind for your publicist, they're going to give you more than they would if you're not communicating with them constantly. Plus, that's kind of the crass reason to do it. Plus, you'll just be more involved. You'll be more engaged in your campaign. You'll be at the core of kind of the whole thing, and you're going to put more energy into it, which is inevitably going to bear better results.
One thing I wanted to let both you, Jackie, and Joel know is that in putting together the show, when I get PR information and I get a contact sheet, I think, Jackie, you absolutely know this. I like to contact the author. I like to talk to them prior to ever going on the air. It gives me an idea of who they are and sometimes I actually create the topic of the show around what they know. So it helps me to talk to them. And I'm saying that as for PR people, they have to understand that when someone's doing a show, whether it be radio, television, or if you're going to be doing an interview for a newspaper, sometimes you have to accommodate them because we all have different ways that we do what we do. I'm just more comfortable speaking to the author along the way. I don't know how you feel about that, Jackie. Please share.
Well, it depends on two things. One depends on the client, because sometimes the client hires a public relations agency to be a shield.
Okay.
Or they're really busy and they're traveling and they don't have the time. Sometimes the media who asks for those kinds of things, you have to weigh whether the time commitment to the author is something that you want to invest in, because a lot of times, they really want to shepherd their time. In my work, most of the time, I try to accommodate the media people. That's my goal. I used to have a room of 1,500 sports writers when I would do a boxing event.
Wow.
And my goal was to make sure that everybody from the boxer and the promoter and the media went away happy, that everybody got what they wanted.
Right, yeah.
And so, I obviously, it's for me to make it, but sometimes I have to go back to the media and say, I'm really sorry, this person really can't accommodate with you. If that's not going to work for you, then I have to pass. It behooves the publicist to try to make things work, but sometimes you're being held also on the chain of the author. You may not know that.
Yeah. I want to ask you this too, because this also happened with that same PR person. I went through the hoops. I did what they said. We scheduled an interview, and then we scheduled the conversation for the phone. And then like a week before, and I scheduled this 2 months in advance, and then like a week before they were supposed to be on my show, I guess they were offered something else. So they canceled my show and decided that now they actually said, we'll contact you after the first year. Maybe we can do it again. See, I personally, I'm sharing this because I think it's important for everybody to understand how we all work. When that happens to me, it's very difficult for me to want to do business with that person because, I took time to set aside my schedule and set up my people, because I set up my panelists based on what the topic is. And, I think in this business, we all need to work together and find common ground. And Joe, what do you think?
I agree. I think everybody should be reasonable with each other. I tend to take the same approach that Jackie does. I'll accommodate the requests. I'll accommodate the first three. When it goes past that, then maybe it's time to think, well, maybe this is a little bit high maintenance of a situation.
Yeah.
Unless it's Oprah, but that's not really.
Depending on who it is.
Well, I'm small potatoes, but
to me, it's kind of I don't think that people. I think entitlement is a really nasty quality. So, but I know a lot of people are busy, so I'll take it until I feel like someone's kind of jerking me around, and or my author around, or my author's jerking around the media, and then But yeah, I think we got to keep things civil.
Yeah.
I think there's unfortunately ego on both sides a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If everybody reins in their egos, usually everything can get done to most people's satisfactions.
Right.
Well, Jackie, Brandon
Jackie,
Steiner.
You're a middle person like me, right? I mean, you kind of oftentimes that's a situation, and maybe if authors are listening, you think about the people who are working with you.
Yeah.
You get caught, but that's what you do. You have to navigate competing demands, which sometimes are competing egos.
I'm really saying this more for the first-time author, whether they have a PR person or not, because I think you have to understand that when you're setting up your interviews, you have to understand the person that you're setting these interviews up, no matter how big or small the show is, it is time out of their lives as well. So if you're a first-time author, you need to think about it before you decide, well, I've changed my mind, I had a better offer, so I'm going to go with them, and I'll get back to you when I can. And Brandon Steiner was on the show, and I know you know Brandon, Jackie, and I really admire that man because he had forgotten that he had set something else up the day he was supposed to be on my show. He flew stayed away. He came back. Took him 2 hours to drive home. He called me and said, James, if you want, I'll be a half hour late, but I can do the interview in the car. And I said, no, Brandon, I want you to be safe. So I'd rather you just get home. And when you get home and you're comfortable, call me because everyone knows I pre-record my shows. So I said, please don't do that. Just call me at your convenience. Well, what I admired about him is number one, he called me. And number two, he still kept his word that he would do the show because he could have easily have said, well, I forgot about this prior commitment and I had to go do it, so I'm going to have to postpone this and do this at another time. But he really does stand up for his word when he says he's going to do something. And I think someone as busy as this man is, most people, or a lot of people might not know who Brandon is. I know, Jackie, you know who he is in the sports industry. And, I really felt great that he took the time to do that.
Well, as an author and publicist, you should make everyone feel important because they're interested in what you're doing, because they really want to give you a forum, because they're willing to bring you to their community and audience that they've built up. So it's just a matter of courtesy and sensitivity and being a mature adult rather than insulting somebody by saying, I've got a better offer. That's just foolish.
But anyway, I'm basically, like I said, I'm saying this for the first-time author because they need to understand that. Once you're big and you have a firm behind you, that might be a little bit different story because I understand why they have to shuffle things around.
Well, there are a lot of things that an author can be doing on their own as well. You don't have to depend fully on a publicist. I mean, one of the things that you can do is do a great media kit. And here are the things that go into a media kit. There's the release on the book. There is, if you have testimonials, and my preference is testimonials from recognizable people. I mean, it's nice to have your clients, but that doesn't mean much to the media. Then a bio on you. And if your bio is long and extended, because we want the media to get to know you and know what you've achieved, but it doesn't all have to go on the air. So then you do a short version called the on-air introduction. And then the next thing you need is 20 questions, because it used to be that interviews were only 10, short 5. That's one of the big things that's changed. It used to be broadcast interviews gave you 5 minutes at that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you have an hour on shows like this. So you want to have enough questions to fill the space. So we suggest 20 questions. And then when we do a media kit, we also include a last page that's all bullet points. It's called Learn More. And it's all about, here's the information on the author's book. Here's the information on their website. Here's their social networks. Here's their coaching program. Here's their telesummit. Here's their online course, just in bullet points, so that the host knows kind of where you're headed. And if people ask them about you, they can talk intelligently about what it is that you do and where you go, where you can go from here to get to know that author. So it's really important that the document you give the media enables them to sell you effectively to their community. So you want to have something prepared that will answer the questions before they ask the questions. Do you have questions? Do you have a bio? Do you have all these things? What are your social networks? Have it all in one document put together in a nicely laid out, appealing. It doesn't need to be a lot of graphics, but photos and a copy of the book and picture of the book, so that it makes it simple and easy. And every author needs to have that regardless. So if you're doing your own publicity, put that together. If you're working with an agency, then work that. And Joel, do you do media kits for your clients too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's another great resource. He puts it into his package. So, that's just the very basic, most important thing that you need. And if you're going to be pitching your own media, then the other element you need is a pitch letter. And that's a very well done, concise document that really portrays why you would be a great guest. And here's the one most important piece of information about that. It needs to talk not just about your credentials and how great your book is. It needs to discuss what it is how this interview is going to impact the audience. How are they going to grow, change, heal, activate? It's something in their lives that's going to give them value. And so that's got to be the focus of your pitch letter. And that's what's going to get you booked on any show.
Great pitch letters. Got to say that.
I wanted to ask both of you, have you heard of Hometown Reads?
I have not.
This just started about a year ago. And what they have done, Becky Robinson's the CEO. And what they did, they put together a website where authors, let's say from Kansas City, you can go there and list your book as a Kansas City author. You can go to Las Vegas and list your book as an author from Las Vegas. And it's great because they're eventually going to start doing calendars. What they're trying to do is bring it together to, like, let's say you're visiting Chicago and you're just curious what's going on in Chicago. You can go to that site on Chicago and see what local authors are there if you're just curious about how they do events or what their book is. And I think this is a fantastic website that she's put together. Stipulation is in order for, they have 82 cities currently that are part of this. In order to be a part of it, to be a city that's part of their website, is you have to have 10 authors that have presented themselves to the website. And then that's when they put the city up and offer those authors. I don't know how you feel about it, but as an author, I think that's fantastic. Joel?
I think anything that gives authors exposure, more, in this day of finding, their books are so much saturating the marketplace, anything that gives people a way to find an author is a good thing.
What do you expect from your author when they sign on with you? Joel?
Why don't you take that one first?
Well, the way I work very personally with my authors. And so I make it very clear right up front that I'm not a service provider, I'm a partner. The thing that I really expect from my authors is they're going to get behind it, because I can only be as good for them as they want to be. That's how I work. Not everybody works that way. To me, that's the biggest thing. And to me, it's also, if I'm interviewing with an author and we're speaking about that and that excites them, then I can tell that they have the chance to be successful. Whereas if someone is hoping that someone is just going to do everything for them, I usually can tell that they're not going to be very successful. So I really look for that. I look for that personal fire and that personal ambition to go out there and make their book a success.
Well, we're down to the last few minutes of the show. So Joel, I'm going to ask you, where can we learn more about your company?
Well, my book launch company, you can find launchmybook.com. And then I have a little spin-off called where I build author websites, and that's authoryourwebsite.com.
All right. And Jackie?
Conscious Media Relations, if you want done-for-you radio media tours and article distribution. And Speakertunity, if you want our wonderful tip sheets on speaking, radio shows, podcasts, and virtual summit. We also have a training program that teaches you to write the materials that get you booked, and that's called getbookedtraining.com. So we cover a lot of different areas, but Joel does great websites, by the way. They're really terrific.
Well, I'd like to
My
thank.
wife actually builds them.
Well, I'd like to thank our guests Jackie Lapin and Joel Pitney, along with my panelists, Dr. Carmen Smith. And to find links to our show, just go to aspectsofwriting.com. You can find the video on our past shows at youtube.com/aspects of writing, or just go to the aspectsofwriting.com website and you can see videos there as well. You will find links to the syndicated shows as well as iHeartRadio, iTunes, Roku TV, and AMFM247.com. In addition, we archive all of our shows on the archive page on aspectsofwriting.com. So until next week, this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Dr. Carmen Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.